The importance of storytelling in fiction writing cannot be overstated. At its core, storytelling is the essence of fiction. It's the art of weaving together words to create an immersive experience that captivates readers and transport them to another world. Good storytelling goes beyond merely recounting events. It engages emotions, it sparks imagination, and it connects with the human experience in profound ways. It connects in ways that are often unique to each reader. Effective storytelling is what transforms a simple sequence of events into a memorable journey for the reader. It's the difference between a dry recitation of facts and a vivid, engaging narrative that resonates and is remembered long after the last page is turned. Storytelling is a skill, it can be learned. Storytelling is a skill that must be mastered by anyone who wants to write fiction. Through skillful storytelling, writers explore complex themes, they challenge perspectives, and also evoke a wide range of emotions. Storytelling allows authors to create characters that feel real, to develop settings that come alive. In essence, mastering the art of storytelling is what separates a good writer from a great one. And it is the key to creating fiction that leaves a lasting impact on its audience. The core elements of storytelling are setting, characters, plot, conflict, and theme. The magic of storytelling lies in how these five elements intertwine to create a cohesive and engaging narrative. Each element supports and enhances the others. For example, setting is the time and the place. Setting provides the backdrop against which the story unfolds. Setting influences the character's behaviors and choices. It shapes plot's possibilities. Setting is also a key component for showing the theme, and in fact, it often reflects the theme, or just as often, contrasts with the theme. So setting is very important to theme. They're very tightly connected. Characters are who the story is about. Characters drive the story forward through their actions and their decisions. Characters also interact with the setting, and they respond to conflicts based on their personalities and their backgrounds, and of course, the story, their story within the story. Plot is what happens in the story. Plot is that sequence of events I mentioned. It's the sequence of events that the characters navigate. Plot is shaped by the setting's constraints and the opportunities. So plot is heavily influenced by characters and setting. Plot is also driven by the goals of the characters and the conflicts they face. Conflict is the challenges that are faced by the characters. Conflict creates the tension and the interest within the story. Without conflict, you really don't have a story, or at least not one that anyone wants to read. Conflict can arise from the setting. Conflict can be between characters or within the character himself or herself. Conflict is what propels the plot and forces the characters to grow. Theme is the underlying message or the idea that ties everything together. As is true of the other elements, theme runs throughout. Theme is often explored through the characters' journeys and the nature of their conflicts. Theme is also seen, as we've already discussed, in the consequences of the plotting events. Okay, that was a lot to throw at you, I know. And I'm sure that by the time I got done with theme, you had forgotten everything I said about setting. So how about if I give you an example of how each storytelling element is separate yet intertwined? Let's break down how these elements work together using an example of The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. It's a very popular book, and most people at least have a general idea of what it's about. The setting in The Hunger Games is found in Panem, a post-apocalyptic North America, which is divided into 12 districts and the capital. This dystopian setting creates immediate tension and establishes the power dynamics that drive the story. The setting is the time and the place. Remember that. Setting is time and place. The characters in this story are Katniss Everdeen. She's the protagonist. She is a skilled hunter from District 12. Another character, the secondary character, the supporting character, in romance, he would be considered the main male character, okay? And the love interest is Peeta Mellark. He is a baker's son, also from District 12, and he and Katniss know each other, but they were not together as children. They simply were friends, or sometimes not quite friends. President Snow is the antagonist. He is the tyrannical leader of Panem. Remember this, characters are who the story is about. You're going to have many characters, but in general, your story will have one to two main characters, possibly a third. In this story, you could argue that the location, the setting itself is a character. So you might have actually three main characters in addition to the antagonist. The plot for this story has several evolutions. The drama begins when Katniss volunteers for the Hunger Games to save her sister. The plot thickens as she survives the deadly competition. The plot fully evolves as Katniss eventually becomes the face of a revolution. Plot is what happens in the story. Again, remember that. Plot is what happens in the story. Conflict in this story is multifaceted. Katniss, standing against the oppressive capital, is where the character versus the society. That is what the conflict is: character versus society. Character versus character is Katniss standing against the other tributes in the arena and fighting her way to victory. Character versus self is Katniss struggling with her feelings for Peeta and her role in the rebellion. Conflict is the challenges faced by characters, both internal and external. Now, we've talked primarily about the main characters' conflicts, but remember that you have many characters, and each character can have varying levels of conflict, all of which will be a challenge faced by that character. The themes in this story include abuse of power, the cost of survival, and the impact of media and propaganda. Remember that theme is the underlying message or the idea that ties everything together. So in this particular book, it definitely is all about abusing power, what the cost is to survive, and what the impact is of false messages, and how that has changed so many lives. So we can clearly see how each storytelling element exists independently yet fits together. Let's refine it a little bit further and look at how these elements work together. The dystopian setting creates the conditions for the Hunger Games, which is the central plot device. Katniss's background, the character's background in the impoverished District 12, has shaped her character and made her resourceful and determined. These are character traits that are crucial for her in surviving the games, which is the plotting element. The conflict between Katniss and the Capitol drives the plot forward and allows for further exploration of the themes. The love story between Katniss and Peeta adds depth to their characters, and it creates additional conflict, both internal and external. The theme of power abuse is reflected in the setting, the Capitol's control over the districts. It's reflected in the plot, the very existence of the Hunger Games, and it's also reflected in the conflicts Katniss faces. By weaving these elements together, Collins has created a rich, compelling narrative that engages your readers on multiple levels. The harsh setting makes us sympathize with Katniss, even though her actions in response to the conflicts might not be considered positive. They reveal her character, and through her journey, we get to explore the complex themes about society and human nature that the author wants us to see. Katniss is a very real and, in the end, a compelling and sympathetic character. And this is why we like this so much. We come to really like her and want her to succeed. And we want definitely for the bad guys to not succeed. So it becomes a fantastic story to explore. Whether or not you like this type of dystopian fiction, the power in this story is worth reading. The interconnectedness is what makes this story feel so cohesive and impactful. The fact that all of those five elements we talked about work together to create a compelling piece that makes perfect sense. You want to think this through when you're writing. Consider how each element you introduce affects the others, and make sure that when you do introduce a character, when you introduce a new theme, a concept, when you introduce a conflict, make sure it contributes to the overall narrative of the theme that you're writing about. There are methods we use as writers to convey the story in a more compelling and immersive way. For example, we use the point of view when the writer chooses the story to be in first person, second person, third person, whatever point of view is chosen. The writer has the ability to draw the reader in to the story or keep them at arm's length. Another tool we use is showing rather than telling. When you show the action rather than tell the reader about it, this also draws the reader in and encourages them to care about the characters in their journey. Show don't tell is a fundamental principle in fiction writing that encourages authors to convey information, emotions, and experiences through vivid sensory details, through action and dialogue, rather than simply stating it outright. This is not easy for many people to figure out how to do. It takes a lot of thought, and it takes a lot of, in most cases, rewriting to get the tell out of your writing. Now, that said, and I'm going to give you an example in a moment that I think will clearly show this, but I want also to say that there are times when we do want to use tell. Show don't tell should be show, but only occasionally tell. It's not so matter that you never tell. It's a matter of showing mostly and telling where it makes sense narratively to make it shorter. Showing is always longer. Telling, sometimes you just have to set the scene with a word or two, a paragraph or two of tell to set the story, to set the scene. So let's talk about what showing does rather than telling. Showing engages readers more deeply by allowing them to experience the story alongside the characters. So if you're showing them, the reader feels like they're in the story with the character. Showing creates a more vivid and memorable scene. The reader is seeing this in their mind. They're seeing what you've written on the page because you've shown it to them, and they see it. They're right in the middle of the scene with you, and they remember that. Showing allows you to develop your characters more naturally and authentically. You are able to give your characters human emotions and human actions. Show allows you to avoid heavy-handed exposition or info dumping. The most deadly thing you can do in a book is to simply give paragraph after paragraph, page after page of info dump. That is going to drive your readers away from the book. They will simply close it up and not finish it. So here's an example to illustrate the difference between telling and showing. I'm going to read this to you first, and it is a total tell. John was nervous about his job interview. He arrived at the office building early and waited anxiously in the lobby. When it was time for his interview, he felt uncomfortable talking to the interviewer and struggled to answer the questions well. Is that poorly written? No, it's very clear. It's very to the point. You know what exactly John did, but it is a tell. And you'll understand this better when you hear me read the show. John's clammy fingers fumbled with his tie for the third time as he glanced at his watch. 8:40 a.m. Still 20 minutes until the interview. He paced the gleaming lobby, his dress shoes clicking against the marble floor. Each passing minute felt like an eternity. Mr. Stevens, a crisp voice cut through his thoughts. We're ready for you now. John swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing. He followed the receptionist, willing his trembling legs to cooperate. In the conference room, he sank into the offered chair, the leather creaking under his weight. So tell me about yourself, the interviewer said, pen poised over a notepad. John's mind went blank. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. The words stuck in his throat like peanut butter. A drop of sweat tickled down his temple as he scrambled to remember the rehearsed answers that had evaporated from his memory. In the showing version, we don't explicitly say that John is nervous or that he struggles in the interview. We don't have to. Instead, we use physical descriptions, his clammy fingers, his trembling legs. We use his actions, pacing and fumbling with his tie. And we use dialogue, stuttering, struggling to speak, to convey his anxiety and difficulty. I will tell you, it takes much more effort to show than it does to tell. But it is worth it to learn how to show and to use it whenever possible in your writing. The approach of using show allows your readers to experience your character life in that moment. With the example I just read, readers would be able to experience John's nervousness along with him. This creates an engaging and immersing reading experience, which is exactly what you want. In order to keep your readers reading, you need to get them engaged and you need to keep them immersed. There is a phrase that I learned many, many years ago, and it's very simply this. You must, as a writer, encourage your readers to suspend their disbelief. This is a concept I've never forgotten, and it's one that I strive always to make happen in my writing. Do I always succeed? Oh no, I'm not perfect, but it is something that's always top of mind for me, and it is what reminds me to show, don't tell. It is what reminds me that at the end, what's most important about my writing is telling the story. And that's why I've started this series about making your writing a little bit better and a little bit more professional with storytelling. As a writer, one of the first skills you should strive to master is absorbing the storytelling concept into your writing habit. It should come into your habit in such a way that it becomes muscle memory. You know, I'm a dancer, and one of the things that you learn when you are learning a dance is that you have to repeat the steps so many times that your legs, the muscles, remember on their own what they're supposed to do next. And we call that muscle memory. Well, you can use that same concept. Your brain's a muscle, and you can repeat this and you can work this so deeply into your consciousness, into your subconsciousness, that you no longer think about what it is to show. You simply employ automatically, as you write, the techniques of showing. In our next Tales and Threads episode, we are going to explore the rich topic of creating compelling characters. For me, the first element of storytelling I develop is my characters. How about you? Where do you start when telling a story? Character, setting, plot, theme, conflict? There's no right or wrong order here. Just be sure to include all 5, and you will come out with a story your readers will want to keep reading. And not only that, they'll be asking you for the next one. This is KZ, wishing you happy writing. Catch up with you next time on Tales and Threads.